Arjun Mehta stepped into Australia, believing his name would one day be written on a degree certificate, not a court judgment. Yet within a few years, that same name echoed through police files, news headlines, and a sentencing order that would lock him away for 97 months, turning a student's dream into a warning the world could not ignore. Arjun Mehta arrived in Australia with hope weighing heavier than his luggage. Coming from a middle-class family in India, he was seen as the one who would change everything. His parents sold land and borrowed money to support his education abroad. The student visa felt like a golden ticket, a chance to build a future that was not possible back home. When he landed in Australia, the city looked clean, organized, and full of opportunity. Tall buildings, wide roads, and smiling faces gave him confidence that his struggle was finally over. Arjun enrolled in a private college to study business management. The course promised strong career outcomes, and the brochures made success look guaranteed. He rented a small room in a shared apartment on the outskirts of the city. Life quickly became expensive. Rent, transport, tuition fees, and daily food costs added pressure. To survive, Arjun took a night job at a warehouse. His days were spent tired, moving between work and classes with little rest. Sleep became a luxury he could not afford. Slowly, the stress began to affect him. He missed lectures and struggled to keep up with assignments. His grades dropped, and warnings from the college started to appear. At the same time, his family expected positive updates and financial support. Arjun hid the truth from them, sending edited messages that painted a successful picture. Inside, fear grew stronger each day. He felt trapped between expectations and reality. Australia still looked perfect from the outside, but Arjun's life was quietly falling apart. The dream that brought him across the ocean was becoming heavy and confusing. He believed that if he could just stabilize his situation, everything would be fine. That belief pushed him closer to choices that would soon change his life forever. Arjun's routine became unmanageable. Long nights at the warehouse left his body exhausted, and his mind struggled to focus during classes. Attendance dropped further, and the risk of visa cancellation became very real. Each unpaid bill added to his anxiety. He began searching for faster ways to earn money, something that would not consume his limited time. During this period of desperation, he was introduced to people who seemed to understand his situation. They spoke casually about easy income and reassured him that many students were already doing it without consequences. At first, the work sounded simple and safe. It involved using his bank account to receive and transfer money and occasionally moving small packages across suburbs. Arjun told himself it was temporary, just until his finances improved. He avoided asking too many questions because the answers might have scared him. The money arrived quickly, far more than his warehouse job ever paid. For the first time in months, he felt relief. Rent was paid on time, and his fear of immediate failure faded. As weeks passed, the tasks became more frequent. The people he worked with remained distant, communicating only through short messages and instructions. Arjun noticed strange patterns in the transactions, but convinced himself it was not his responsibility to understand them. He believed that being a student kept him unnoticed by authorities. That assumption gave him false confidence. What Arjun did not realize was that these activities were already flagged by financial monitoring systems. His account was quietly marked, and his movements began forming a pattern. While he focused on survival, his name was slowly entering police databases. The shortcut he chose felt like rescue, but it was actually pulling him deeper into a situation far beyond his control. What Arjun was part of no longer felt like a side activity. The operation around him became structured and carefully timed. He was instructed where to go, when to move, and how to avoid attention. The packages were always sealed, collected from public places, and delivered within strict time limits. Arjun noticed security cameras at many locations, but he followed instructions without hesitation. He believed obedience reduced risk. His daily life continued as usual, which made everything seem normal despite the growing danger. Money continued to flow through his account. Transfers arrived from unknown sources and were quickly sent onward. He was told to keep balances low and delete messages after every task. Arjun followed these rules carefully, unaware that digital records never truly disappear. Each transfer created a trail, and each location ping added another piece to a larger puzzle. While he thought he was invisible, technology was quietly recording every step. Around him, other students lived similar double lives. On campus, they appeared tired but ordinary. Outside, they moved through suburbs carrying responsibility far heavier than their age. Arjun noticed fear in some of their expressions, but never asked questions. Silence felt safer than curiosity. The sense of community within this hidden world made him feel less alone, even as the risk increased. Police investigations were already underway. Financial intelligence units noticed repeated patterns involving student accounts. Surveillance teams observed movements that did not match ordinary student behavior. Arjun remained unaware of the attention he was drawing. He focused on catching up with assignments and maintaining appearances. The crime he was part of stayed hidden in plain sight, blending into daily routines. By the time doubt began to surface in his mind, it was already too late to step away. The arrest happened without warning. It was early in the morning when the silence of the apartment complex was broken by sudden movement. Multiple police units arrived at once, blocking exits and securing the area. Arjun was asleep when officers entered the apartment. There was no chaos, only firm instructions and controlled actions. Within minutes, his life shifted from routine stress to absolute shock. He was handcuffed and escorted outside, while neighbors watched from behind doors and windows. Inside the apartment, officers searched every corner. Phones, laptops, bank cards, and documents were collected as evidence. Arjun's personal belongings were placed into clear bags, each item stripped of privacy and meaning. He tried to understand what was happening, but confusion took over. Until that moment, consequences had felt distant and unlikely. Now they stood directly in front of him. At the police station, the scale of the situation became clearer. Investigators treated the case as part of a larger operation, not an individual mistake. Arjun's records were already organized, and his activities were mapped out in detail. Dates, locations, and transactions were presented as facts, leaving little room for denial. The calm certainty of the evidence made the reality sink in. News of the arrest spread quickly through student circles. Fear and panic replaced the usual silence. Some accounts went inactive overnight, and people stopped answering messages. Arjun realized he was not alone in custody, but that knowledge offered no comfort. His student identity no longer mattered. In that moment, he understood that the choices he made to survive had placed him inside a system far stronger than him. The sense of safety he once believed in disappeared completely. The court process moved slowly but relentlessly. Arjun was transferred between holding facilities as the case developed. Legal documents outlined charges that sounded far more serious than anything he had imagined. What he once believed were small tasks were now described as part of organized criminal activity. Each court date added weight to the reality he was facing. There was no confusion anymore, only fear and regret. Investigators presented detailed evidence collected over months. Bank statements showed repeated transactions linked to illegal operations. Location data placed Arjun at multiple delivery points across different suburbs. Deleted messages were recovered, revealing instructions and timelines. Surveillance footage connected movements to specific dates. Every piece fit together with precision. The case was not built on assumptions, but on patterns that could not be explained away. Experts testified about how international students were targeted by criminal networks. They explained how financial pressure and visa fears were used to trap young people into illegal roles. While this context was acknowledged, it did not reduce responsibility. The court made it clear that participation, even at a lower level, still caused harm. Arjun's belief that he was replaceable or unimportant worked against him. His repeated involvement showed commitment, not accident. As hearings continued, Arjun's defense weakened. Claims of ignorance failed under the weight of evidence. The judge emphasized that warnings were available and laws were clearly communicated to visa holders. Education status did not grant protection from criminal accountability. With each session, the outcome felt more certain. Arjun watched his future narrow, understanding that the proof against him had already sealed his fate long before he stepped into the courtroom. The final hearing brought an atmosphere of heavy expectation. Arjun stood before the court knowing that the decision would define the rest of his life. The judge reviewed the full scope of the case, focusing on the length of involvement and the repeated nature of the actions. The courtroom remained silent as the seriousness of the crimes was outlined in clear terms. This was not treated as a momentary lapse, but as sustained participation in an illegal system. When the sentence was delivered, it carried a message beyond punishment. Arjun was sentenced to 97 months in prison, a period long enough to erase the life he once planned. The judge stressed deterrence, explaining that such cases required strong consequences to protect the community and prevent exploitation of the student visa system. The words fell heavily, marking the end of hope for leniency. Immigration consequences followed immediately. Arjun's student visa was canceled and deportation was confirmed after completion of the sentence. Years of effort, sacrifice, and expectation ended in a single ruling. Media outlets quickly reported the case, highlighting the length of the sentence and the background of the accused. The story spread through social media and news platforms, reaching students and families far beyond Australia. For Arjun, the sentence felt unreal. Time stretched ahead in blocks of years rather than months. The future he imagined, filled with graduation and career goals, no longer existed. The court's message was clear and final. His case was now an example, a warning intended to reach others before they made similar choices. The punishment was not just personal. It was meant to send a signal that shortcuts came with irreversible costs. Prison life began with isolation and silence. Arjun was placed in a system where time moved slowly and routines were strict. The outside world felt distant and unreachable. Days were measured by schedules, not freedom. The simple actions he once took for granted were now controlled. Surrounded by unfamiliar faces and languages, he felt the weight of being far from home more than ever before. Communication with family became limited and painful. Letters and short calls carried emotions he struggled to express. Shame replaced pride as his family faced questions from their community back in India. Financial burdens remained, but now there was no way to help. Arjun spent long hours reflecting on how quickly everything had collapsed. The pressure that once pushed him toward risky choices now felt insignificant compared to the reality of confinement. Inside prison, he observed others with similar stories. Many had taken small roles, believing they were safe, only to face heavy sentences. These stories mirrored his own mistakes and deepened his regret. Education programs and awareness sessions often reference cases like his, using real outcomes to discourage others. Hearing his situation reduced to a lesson was difficult to accept. As months passed, the psychological impact grew stronger. Hope became something distant and fragile. Arjun tried to adapt, focusing on self-discipline and avoiding trouble. The idea of returning home after release no longer brought comfort, only uncertainty. His identity as a student had vanished, replaced by a record that would follow him forever. Life behind bars became a daily reminder that one decision, made under pressure, can redefine an entire future. As time passed, Arjun's story stopped being about him alone. Authorities, colleges, and immigration officers began referencing the case as an example of what happens when laws are ignored. Information sessions for international students quietly pointed to outcomes like his, emphasizing responsibility and awareness. Without his presence, his actions continued to speak, shaping warnings meant to prevent similar paths. The message was delivered without emotion, but its impact was strong. From inside prison, Arjun followed fragments of the outside world through limited news access. He learned that his case had reached far beyond the courtroom. Families reconsidered sending children abroad, and students became more cautious about quick money offers. The dream of studying overseas appeared more fragile, tied closely to discipline and lawful behavior. Arjun understood that his failure had become a tool for prevention. The future ahead was narrow and uncertain. After completing his sentence, deportation awaited, along with the challenge of rebuilding life from nothing. The degree he once chased no longer mattered. His record would follow him across borders, closing doors before they even opened. The cost of his actions could never be measured only in years served. This story stands as a quiet but powerful warning. Pressure, fear, and ambition can push people toward dangerous choices. The system does not see intentions, only actions. Arjun's journey shows how easily opportunity can turn into punishment. For those watching, the lesson is clear. Shortcuts may promise relief, but they often lead to consequences that last a lifetime.